This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Our topics are large and small. When you really need to know, we are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks. Good afternoon and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, AM 830 WCRN. And of course, we are live streaming on the TuneIn app. Just punch in WCRN. If you don't already have it, do me a favor, hit that like button so it's easy to find and we know that you're there. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. You can tell Alexa to play WCRN. She'll do it. No questions asked. We also have our text line, which is 617-297-8388, or email me at textjoeontheradio, exactly what you're doing, at gmail.com. Our social media is Joe Mangi, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. We're also live streaming on my social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, as well as YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and we're on Twitch TV for some reason at Joe M Show. You can reach us there. 508-871-7000. Ted A is flying the board this afternoon. Good to have you back, Ted. Looking great. All right, folks. It's a tough day today. A real tough day. After I left the station yesterday, the news started to trickle in. Watching what was going on in Uvalde, Texas, and watched it, unfold. And at one point, I had to take a break for a few times. I think a lot of you probably did, if you could even watch it for any length of time. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't want to talk about this on tomorrow's show. There'd be plenty of times because these things become political. And of course they did. President spoke last night and he started strong, folks. I was really impressed with his initial delivery. He talked about losing a child is like ripping a hole in your soul that can't be filled. And I'm thinking he's going to be very presidential here and unite the country. He's showing empathy and sympathy. But he got animated and he sounded like the angry old man that he's proved to be when he started to regurgitate the talking points and the gun ban and assault weapons. Mind you, that all of the bodies of these children hadn't even been removed from the school yet. There's always plenty of time for the politics of it. I thought it was ghoulish to even leverage this as an opportunity for political power. And then, of course, this morning, it's all over. Everybody's talking about it. And some are getting into the politics and gun control and rules and recapping everything. And I'm thinking, well, we're going to have to talk about it. So we'll talk about it to a limited way. I mean, and by now, unless you literally have been in a coma or incommunicado for the last 24 hours, you know exactly what's going on. Second deadliest school shooting since Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. That's almost 10 years ago. 19 students. And when we say students, on top of it being a school shooting, these aren't 17 and 18-year-olds that some of them would have had a fighting chance to get out of the way or do something. We're talking about 7, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 19 students dead, 2 teachers. There are 17 survivors who are fortunately holding on. But the list of shootings and incidences in the past decade, I mean, it includes supermarkets in Buffalo and Boulder, Colorado, a rail yard in San Jose, California, a birthday party in Colorado Springs, a convenience store in Springfield, Missouri, a synagogue in Pittsburgh, churches in Sutherland Springs, Texas, and Charleston, South Carolina, a Walmart in El Paso, a FedEx warehouse in Indianapolis, a music festival in Las Vegas, massage parlors in the Atlantic area, and a Waffle House in Nashville, a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado. And now, Robb Elementary School joins that list. We have a 10-year-old girl who was shot and killed while making the 911 call. The perpetrator entered the back school. Now, one of the interesting, maybe that's another way to put it, but you find out that there was a domestic disturbance with Ramos. This is the 18-year-old, right? He has a domestic disturbance. He shoots his grandmother. The grandmother, fortunately, was able to get to the phone at least. She's in critical condition, and he takes off. Motivation for why he picked this school, we don't know. I was checking news out and stories before coming on air, and the news keeps changing because we are nowhere near the details on everything here. So we have to really continue to let this flow in and come to us. Find out what exactly was going on there. And the discussions are going to be all over the place. And let me just say this again. I'm listening this morning, and there's all kinds of discussion. Some talk hosts declaring, well, they know how to fix it. They know this can never happen, but it should happen this way, and I solved it, and things like that. And on top of all this, don't forget we had the November 2021 Wisconsin parade when Darrell Brooks, a 39-year-old man who took his red SUV and plowed it into the Christmas parade, killing 5 and injuring 48. And the point I'm getting to is with Ramos, Brooks, Sandy Hook, we do find a common thread that there was a domestic disturbance before they all did these things. I'm not suggesting that's what triggered it. I'm saying we're starting to see a common thread here, though. And maybe there's a pattern if we look closer, because are we studying any of this? Now, many years ago, the FBI created their profiling unit, and they looked into, one was serial killers and things of that nature. But have we done a deep dive into studying these incidences and seeing if we can establish a pattern or red flags that are well worth looking at? Because now we have to look at that, folks, right? Now, according to early reports, this kid Ramos dropped out of school. He was self-isolating, blowing up relationships, and finding out now that people were actually intimidated or afraid of him. And he was doing self-harm. But these names of these schools and incidents, I mean, they're still in the recesses of our mind, right? Sandy Hook Elementary School, Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School, Oxford High School, Santa Fe High School, Columbine, and now Robb Elementary has joined. We had, and this is something I learned shortly before coming on the air. When Ramos took off and he crashed his truck near that school, there was a funeral parlor too, but there was the local roaming school police officer happened to be nearby. And I didn't find out till late this morning that this officer engaged in gunfire with him and got wounded and was unable to follow him into the school. And Ramos entered through a back door, which wasn't supposed to happen. So an interview with the mayor that should have been secured. Which brings the discussion to taking soft targets and making them hardened. Is it kind of disgusting that we would have to have a conversation about fortifying schools. President Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, took time out of his country's war, where he's being savaged by Russia, to send his thoughts and prayers to America. Imagine that. The president of war-torn Ukraine feels bad for the United States of America. Think about that. So we have to have that discussion. Because let me tell you something. You're not going to round up the guns. There are 800 million guns floating around this country, over 2 billion rounds of ammunition. That barn door is open, folks.
2 minutes.
It's not going to happen, okay? So we have to look at the mental health in this country, how we're addressing that. We have to look at the red flag laws and things that tip us off. We have to look at, unfortunately, a discussion about hardening soft targets, and that includes elementary schools, high schools, middle schools. Just has to be done, folks. And we have to talk about things like one point of entry and maybe having armed police officers or security guards there. Or, and this got discussed and has been discussed many times, is allowing those teachers and staff who wish to be armed the ability to be armed, as long as they can legally obtain a permit and then go through a specialized instruction and they absolutely carry concealed. It defeats the purpose if you know who has a self-defense weapon on them, folks. Totally defeats the purpose. And the talk about having armed police officers and security guards there got boo-booed because people with guns triggered people. We'll continue the conversation after our break. Come back on the other side. 508-871-7000. 508-871-7000. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Stick with us.
Those things we most cherish are all put at risk through the improper disposal of mercury in everyday items. Fluorescent lamps, thermometers, thermostats all contain mercury. Mercury Recovery Program is designed to assist your community in the safe disposal of this heavy metal. For more information about where to dispose of these products, contact your local Board of Health, Department of Public Works, or visit our website at keepmercuryfromrising.org. Working together, we can keep our environment safe.
Attention all contractors. The Massachusetts Mercury Management Act makes it illegal to improperly dispose of old thermostats in the trash. They contain mercury that can be harmful to human health and the environment. Building and HVAC contractors, plumbers, and electricians, please properly dispose of all mercury thermostats. Contact your local health or public works department for information on where to safely dispose of thermostats in your community. Visit online, keepmercuryfromrising.org for details. Brought to you by Win Waste Innovations. Performance for the planet.
Hey everybody, Ryan Maloney here from It's the Liquor Talking, letting you know that you can hear us Saturday mornings at 11, but also at our new time, weeknights, right after Howie Carr at 7 p.m. It doesn't stop there. Randall and I are going to stick around and host North Star Music after the show. So join us for New England's only show about wine and spirits, and then pour yourself a glass of your favorite adult beverage. Enjoy Randall and I as we listen to your favorite music on the North Star.
30 seconds.
You just may have the best podcast anywhere.
Blah, 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 blah.
But who knows it exists? Hello? Get your podcast to broadcast on radio. Create a podcast. Improve your podcast sound with professional production and editing. Record your podcast in a real radio studio. Visit podcasttobroadcast.org today. Get your podcast on the radio.
All right, here we go.
Podcasttobroadcast.org.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show. You want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks. So welcome back to the second segment of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show from AM 830 WCRN on the TuneIn app, and we're live streaming on my social media platforms, YouTube channel, Twitch TV, even LinkedIn, folks. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. We'll discuss U of D school shooting for a little bit more, and we'll move on to some other things. The investigation is being led by the Texas Rangers. They have the lead in this. The interesting thing here is that this is a town of only about 16,000 plus, very close to the border, very high Latino population. A lot of immigrants settle in this area, so there's a lot of history there. So the Border Patrol is known to be in that area. They have stations close by and offices or whatever they call them for themselves. And when the call went out as to a school situation and a lockdown was in process, that's going to rally every law enforcement official in the area, obviously. And after, it used to be, folks, after Columbine, the standard operating procedure was that you have a school shooting or a shooting inside a building, is you wait and gather all the responding officers. SWAT, special weapons and tactics show up, and they usually take point in command, and they develop a plan. But that's changed. That changed because it doesn't work out. Look at Marjorie School in Florida, right? We had the deputy who was actually there at the school, and he refused to go in. He was too afraid. Well, that's the way you got to say it. It's all it was. He was afraid. He wouldn't go and enter the school. But now the standard procedure is the first officer on the scene follows the noise, i.e. the gunfire. You go towards it, even if you're alone, especially with a school, because you have unarmed, innocent children who are, in all those incidences of school shooting, just being slaughtered and shot. And you're the only armed person anywhere near this building, and you're waiting for what? So now the standard procedure, operating procedure, is you charge for the gunfire. And it turns out that there was actually a Border Patrol agent who got to the school first, and he was part of BORTAC. Now, BORTAC, I'm sure you probably have heard this already, is the elite division of the Border Patrol. They're the equivalent of their SWAT. They're specially trained in tactics. And he went in. And it's thought, as this point, like I said, as CIS continues to investigate and they really do the forensics, we'll get more and more information. But it's thought that he's the officer that got shot in the school, but also took down Ramos. And the kid had body armor on too. Just like Buffalo. So what does that tell us, folks? That, and just because somebody may be off balance and they have a mental illness doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. They're just warped in how they interpret things and see things. And they're smart enough to have multiple weapons and to wear body armor, bulletproof vests, helmets, shielding, gloves, making it, of course, harder to take them down by law enforcement. So he's the first guy on the scene. He runs in. He confronts that this kid Ramos made his way in, and he hunkered down in a 4th grade classroom. We have 2 teachers who ended up giving their lives protecting their students. That's not something our educators should have to consider part of their work description, folks. Nor is it something that students should have to contend with for just going to school. For just going to school, for leading their lives and being the children they are. Just not the way it's supposed to work. So here's the first in. This is the AP report that he was the first on scene and absolutely a hero. He ran towards the danger to save children. Now, what should the conversations be about? I suppose looking at the hows and the whys. And do we have to look at the social media posts? Because how do we tell the difference between a harmless, stupid post and some harmless or what would be harmless rhetoric going out there, and what's really either a cry for help or an absolute insane post? Ramos had, and Meta took it down, right, on his Instagram. Of course they did, but he just loaded the pictures up of his weapons and magazines. And I can tell you something, for a guy that grew up in a house with guns and a police officer father and was going to the range at a very young age with him and other police officers and having a gun at a young age and all that. And not that the social media existed when I was that age, but I could tell you with all the confidence in the world, I don't care if I was 18 or 25, if I was being a jamoke and posting pictures of my weapons and ammunition, again, I don't care how old I was. My father would have taken my weapons away and slapped me upside the head. That in itself is kind of that's a red flag right there. Why are you doing that? There's no reason. You don't make those kinds of posts. You don't advertise it. You just right there, this is off. And of course, people are asking the question about 18-year-old, how does he buy these guns? Well, look, the way it works is you can get an FID card at 14. It allows you to buy ammunition and a long-barreled gun, a rifle. So at 18, you can buy rifles. You bought 2 at once. You can't buy a handgun until you're 21 years old. That's federal statute. Now, you can buy a handgun in a private sale at 18. It's called a blue card. You fill out and you send it in and register it. So he legally bought them. But I guess the question is, should the background checks be just a little more thorough? Because he passed the background check. But how do you determine that he's unbalanced at the time of purchase, I guess? 508-871-7000. What say you? Let's go to Tom, who's on the line. Tom, good afternoon.
Hey, how's it going?
Good,
the most important questions nobody asked.
Is
he an illegal alien from Mexico? Nobody ever said.
No, he's a citizen.
Are you sure? Because I know a lot of them. They got phony IDs.
Okay.
And also,
I don't know if he is or isn't. Every article and news report that I've heard refers to him that he grew up there. He went to school there. Every indication is that he's a citizen. We should assume he's a citizen unless it comes out that he's not.
We should not be assuming.
Well, yeah, actually we should.
Hey, no, he's on the border. I knew agents down there, Border Patrol agents. And you know what the Mexican people would do in the morning? 7, 8 o'clock, they'd line up. He said maybe about 100, 200 of them trying to get across the border. They'd have 1 or 2 kids in their hands. bring them across the border. That you were using our
All right.
school
Well,
system.
Tom, the thing here is he went to school. He dropped out 2 years before graduating. Every interview I've seen with kids that went to school with him, went to school, knew him until he disappeared, right? Going into the junior year. They all assumed he dropped out. Now we find out from the mayor in an interview a few hours ago that he in fact dropped out. So I understand what you're saying and you're going there, but I honestly don't think it's helpful to the conversation right now because all indications he grew up in the town. His grandmother was there. Now, if that comes out later, it comes out later. But we've got to work on the assumption that he is, and just because you live in a border town, that doesn't mean that you're automatically an illegal alien. And so, matter of fact, if I was
2 minutes
an illegal alien, I would get as far away from the border as I could. Common sense would dictate, don't hang around the point of illegal entry where you actually broke the law, right? I mean, that's like returning to the scene of the crime. Wouldn't it make sense? Anyway, 508-871-7000, folks, for the conversation. And what say you? Again, we're now living in a society where our students, our children, have to be taught where are the best places to hide, how to barricade a door, how to be quiet, how to recognize that what is happening, and how to respond on what they call a lockdown. That's where we are in society today. And unfortunately, I think we have to take it a step further. Now, we
1 minute.
secure our concert venues and whatever, right? I don't care if you're going to a truck rodeo, a ball game, a football game, a concert. Of course, we had the Las Vegas situation outdoor, and we know what happened there. Point is, maybe we have to tighten up and make our schools a little bit of a harder target. And these deranged people always go after the soft targets.
30.
And they like to be where they know there's no chance of them getting shot back at. Folks, we're going to take a break halfway through the show here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show, 508-871-7000. We'll go to the phones on the other side. Stick with me here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show and WCRN AM 830.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist Sherry Spear, and here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. We're going to keep it pleasant again today with high temperatures in the 70s away from the coastline. If you're headed to the beaches, temperatures will be a little cooler with highs in the 60s this afternoon, but all around just feeling wonderful with that low humidity for yet another day. I'm meteorologist Sherry Spear, and you can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
There's no better way to celebrate beautiful weather than cruising the great outdoors. Hi, I'm Paul Kowalis, president of Linders. We offer the area's largest selection of late model, certified pre-owned vehicles, most still under factory warranty.
Like a 2019 Chevrolet Traverse Premier with only 26,000 miles for only $45,995.
Celebrate the arrival of spring with a quality pre-owned vehicle from Linders on Granite Street in Worcester. Linders.com.
Linders, the intelligent alternative.
At Discover, we believe anniversaries should be a time of celebration, not
1 minute.
That's why we think annual fees are ridiculous. And now, just for giving us a try, we're going to give new card members a 1-year anniversary gift they'll never forget. At the end of your first year, we'll match all the cash back you've earned dollar for dollar. No caps and no catches, because we know if you try us, you'll like us. And that's worth every penny. Try it and believe it at discover.com/match. Cashback match offer only for new card members. Limitations apply.
Hi, this is Jerry Doherty from Making Money Last. If you think the economy is doing well, I've got even more good news. Making Money Last will now be heard right here on WCRN 5 days a week, Monday through Friday from 11 to noon. So be sure to tune in.
Music all night. News and talk all day on Full Service Radio. AM 830 WCRN.
Here we go. This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks. So welcome back to the second half of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget we're live streaming on the TuneIn app. Just punch in WCRN. Do me a favor, hit that like button so that we know you're there and you're easy to find. 508-871-7000. I'd like to just shift gears. We'll be talking about Texas situation for days and days to come, folks. And what's interesting is we have an attempted assassination plot against George W. Bush. Yeah. An alleged ISIS operative has been charged with plotting to assassinate George Bush in Dallas. He even made a trip from Ohio to Dallas to plot out George Bush's house and offices in the area. So this goes back to Iraqi war. And he was going to, by the way, the 52-year-old man who's been charged with this, Shahib Ahmed Shahib. So he was arrested yesterday in Ohio. And it was an FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force that was monitoring this. And George Bush, he made the statement to the effect of he has complete confidence in the Secret Service. So the thing is, they knew this was happening, and they wanted to. At no point was George Bush actually in physical danger, according to them, because they knew what was going on. Right? Thank you, Patriot Act. What was going on, and kind of monitored it, and then placed an FBI agent into the mix to gather intelligence. So he was being tracked by the FBI after he unwittingly revealed the alleged plot to a paid FBI informant back in 2021. So they were using a CI to get this info and the intel. And the plotters wished to kill former President Bush because they felt that he was responsible for killing many Iraqis and breaking apart the entire country of Iraq. That's what's in the court documents, guys. FBI Special Agent John Ypsilantis said back on March 23rd in a search warrant, and that was just unsealed. Shahib, who entered the U.S. back in September of 2020 under the Trump administration on a tourist visa, he conducted surveillance in Dallas just a few months ago. Now, the lawyer for Shahib could not immediately be identified, so we'll figure out who this is, what the defense is going to be, and that kind of thing. As I said, President Bush, he said, and what is he going to say, folks? Of course he has to say he's all the confidence in the world in the Secret Service, in law enforcement, and intelligence communities. And if they're letting him know this is happening, we're watching him, we got it under control, don't worry. Apparently this guy's brilliant plan. Well, actually, before I tell you the plan, let's back up. Part of his plan, folks, was actually to bring a team over into the country. And how was he going to do that? Through the southern border. He was going to put together at least a 4-member team, bring them into the country through the southern Mexican border. And when you're doing an international plot to assassinate a former president, and a key part of your planning is to bring your compatriots here into the country via the southern border, because it's not a problem. They're not going to be turned back. They're not going to be detained. I mean, they'll be detained for the amount of time that it takes to fill out a report form, not an order to appear, in order to report. I've gone through the difference before. One takes about an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and a half, and that tells you you have a court date. You need to appear in front of an immigration judge at this time and date at this location. But in order to report, just simply says, you got X number of days to, report to the local immigration office, wherever you decide to go in the country after we put you on a plane or a bus, on taxpayers' dime, by the way. So he's going to bring his team over the southern border, put them together, and then they were going to get a van. And when the former president's traveling, slide open the van door and open fire. Now, since former presidents can't drive themselves and they can't fly on commercial airliners and they have Secret Service protection, that means that you're never going to see Donald Trump, George Bush, Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama ever driving a vehicle or showing up at the gate while you're going to try to take a weekend trip down to Florida. It doesn't happen. They're in Secret Service vehicles, which are all armored, or at least when their protectee is going to be in the armored vehicle. So that plan really wasn't the best to begin with, to tell you the truth. It probably wasn't going to work out too well. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. I don't know who we have on the phone, but we good to go? All right, we'll get back to the phone in a second. Yeah, we go? Yeah. Good afternoon. Who do we have here?
Yeah, Mark Worcester.
Hey, Mark. What do you have on your mind?
I wish they would get a special task force together and find out who leaked those documents from the Supreme Court. What's that going on 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. Well, Roberts ordered the marshal to investigate. Do you really think there's a lot of effort being made, honestly?
What do you think?
I don't think there is. And I don't think that the powers to be, Mark, I don't think the powers to be, Mark, are too concerned about finding out who this is. That and as far as I'm concerned, if they can't figure it out, then you turn it over to another agency and you let them find it, because that undermines the Supreme Court of the United States. It means you have staff member that you can't trust. I did a whole show going through the possibilities, because you have the print office, you have the tech, right? Don't forget you got IT, who has access to all those computers. You've got the janitorial staff who could have found, trying to figure out why a document that is a couple months old gets leaked. Is it because that's the only document that they happened to get that was left on a copy machine or wasn't shredded and they found in the trash? I don't know those. Those are the questions that have to be answered. Those are the questions that have to be answered. I don't know what that is, but I think that they should find whoever leaked it, prosecute them, and there are federal laws about stealing government information and using it the way he did. So there are laws to be charged under this. And they should absolutely do it, because you've got justices now who have to question everybody in their staff, whether they're consciously doing it or not, folks, but they do. So just getting back to the what we're talking about with George Bush in this attempt on his life. And if you ever had a question as to why do we provide Secret Service, this is why, especially if you have a president that was president during a time of war. And what president hasn't there been? I mean, Donald Trump's the only one that didn't start anything while he was in office. But this is why. And if they incur the wrath of fundamentalists and terrorists while they're president, it is our responsibility to provide protection for the rest of their lives, folks. And I know there's a price tag with it and all that, but that's just part of the system, and all presidents get it. They can turn it away after they're out of office. By law, a president can't withdraw from Secret Service while they're sitting president, of course. So Shahab, I guess we'll pronounce it. Though Shahab was not himself a member of the Islamic State militant group, the warrant that was unsealed yesterday described the smuggling plot as an attempt to provide material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization, specifically ISIS. So although ISIS has been decimated and weakened, by no means are they no longer a danger. You have to remember something, folks, when we talk about things like ISIS, it's not so much how many members do they have and what do they have for guns and equipment. We're talking about it's an idea. And when it's an idea, you can't kill an idea. You can't throw an idea into prison. And if they're fundamentalists and they're hell-bent on
2 minutes.
doing something, it doesn't matter how many of them are left. It only takes one, as we can see. Right? So Shahib asked the informant that the FBI was paying for details about security operations at Bush's home in Dallas and Crawford, Texas, the ranch. The ranch is in Crawford. Now, in February, the informant picked up Shahib at the airport in Dallas and then assisted him as he used a phone to record video of the gated home, as well as the library. Don't forget, all presidents are actually required by law to create a library. I wonder if you knew that. These aren't just egos that the guys have. They're actually required to have a presidential library, and they're required to put all things in it, good and bad. They can't sugarcoat it. They can't, edit it or delete. They got to put everything in there. Correspondence, phone records, visitor records, it's all supposed to go in there. And he also inquired about how to obtain fake FBI and police badges. So the informant was supplying information in exchange for money
30 seconds.
for over 10 years. Plus, he recorded a lot of these conversations. It's crazy, folks. Hey, we got to take the third and final break in Wednesday's edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available to join the conversation. Stick with us. We'll be back on the other side for the final segment of the Wednesday edition.
Gordon Lightfoot, live, the legend in concert. You could read my mind, love. October 19th at the Hanover Theater. Sunday. A night of hit after hit after hit. Get tickets now at thehanovertheater.org or call 877-571-SHOW. Gordon Lightfoot, the legend in concert.
Are you ready to transform your future? An online degree from Riviera University can help. Choose from programs like business, nursing, psychology, public health. Learn more at rivieraradio.com. That's rivieraradio.com.
Wednesday mornings at 9, it's the Voice of Business from the Worcester Chamber of Commerce, committed to helping your business grow. Right here on Full Service Radio, AM 830 WCRN.
93% of adults
1 minute.
listen to the radio each week. Of those exposed to radio ads, over half made a purchase. Despite how often the media reports on newer forms of advertising, it is, in fact, free broadcast radio that most effectively reaches and truly influences customers. Radio allows you to place your company's message directly to the radio audience for 30 or 60 seconds.
30
And it's
seconds.
a gold mine. Radio advertisements are more memorable compared to written and visual ads. It's just this simple. Sound is stored more effectively inside memories. Reach over 90% of this market's potential customers with your radio message on WCRN Full Service Radio. Call station manager Chris Thompson at 508-870-5803, extension 222, or visit
All right, here we go.
WCRNradio.com.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Thanks for joining us. You can join the conversation at 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000. So a couple of things I want to get through before the end of the show today. And of course, yesterday was another primary day. And we're seeing the results come in, and a lot of eyes, of course, on Georgia's primary yesterday. And the accusations, remember, this triggered, right? The new voting laws in Georgia called a big disruption, and MLB pulled a game, and you had Delta and other companies like flipping out over this. It turns out they moved the game to Colorado, who has more restrictive voting laws than the Georgia law did, and they accused people like Stacey Abrams, of voter suppression. Well, I don't see a lot of voter suppression going on here, considering 850,000 plus ballots in early voting alone. That's not even what happened yesterday at the polls. That's a 212% increase over the 2020 presidential election and 168% increase over the 2018 gubernatorial election. So the new voting law in Georgia actually gave more days for the early voting. What the left seems to always have a problem with here, folks, is they're always hung up on the voter ID. Right? That's always seems to be their real problem, is they don't want you to have to establish your identity. They don't want confirmation that you are who in fact you say you are when you go in to vote, which no one has ever been able to justify that kind of thought process to me. Matter of fact, I'm exactly the opposite. There's no reason in the world that you shouldn't be required to show an ID to vote. And to imply that that's racist is actually the racist move here, because you're saying that based on race, they're incapable of the simple task of having an ID. And that's ludicrous. Now, some of the races were interesting. Of course, the Purdue and Kemp thing. I mean, that, you got Purdue backed by Trump, Kemp backed by Pence, and he ran away with it. But that, Trump was basing it really because he didn't think that the former governor, or the current governor who was in office during the 2020 election, did enough to find fraudulent votes and do enough work to satisfy Trump. So that was more based on a personal thing. But Herschel Walker, 68+%, that's a landslide in the primary. And he was backed. Actually, him and Trump are good friends, old friends, and have been for a very long time. So he walked away with nearly 800,000 votes himself in this primary. So good for him. Now, the polls, as we lead into, it was still a few months away here from midterm elections, but the latest poll, looking this morning, 83% of Americans are dissatisfied with the direction of the nation. 16% are satisfied. I would really like to have a conversation with a couple of these people in that 16%, thinking that we're headed in the right direction. They've got to be of the school of thought that gas should be $10 or $12 and that the government should increase the pay. Now, up until a couple of days ago, if you had said that, you got accused of, conspiracy theory and being off your rocker. But the president actually admitted and was thrilled and spoke from the podium and said, this is good and it's painful. And when we get through it, it'll be great that this is going to be the transformation to electric cars and getting off of fossil fuel because of the high gas prices. So we know that's part of the big plan all along anyway. But as we come into the midterm elections with such, I mean, how low can you go, Joe? They just seem to keep dropping. So the last big waves really that we saw in the midterms of presidents, well, actually not even, because we go back to 1980, and that was the first election term for Ronald Reagan. But you coming off the Carter years, there was a huge shift in Congress then. Then we saw the 1994 ones, and of course, the 2010, Barack Obama's first term midterms. And probably the biggest one on the Senate would have been 1980 when 9 incumbents lost their seats and they had run. We have 30, I have to check, it's 33 or 34. I mean, it's up there into the 30s of incumbents who aren't going to seek re-election. Either they're seeking another office or they're retiring this year because they don't want to lose their seat in the midterms. Now, there are 6 states in the Senate that Dems could lose. And it seems that the 2 biggest states to probably watch that could be the upset is Colorado and Washington State. No, obviously DC. So we have these midterm elections coming up. We have the primaries, interesting results. Also, we've got on the Democratic side that Herschel Walker is going to face off is Ralph Warnock. He won the primary. He was challenged by Tamara Johnson-Shealy. And he absolutely ran away with it with 96% of the vote. So we'll have Herschel Walker and Ralph Warnock facing off in November. And we'll have Stacey Abrams and Kemp facing off as well for the gubernatorial race. Now, the other thing is, and this comes back to what I was sharing with you people on Friday and Sunday when I was talking about the World Health Organization. And they're currently in their World Health Assembly, and they're dealing with these amendments that, from all places, came from our very own president. That would, in essence, turn the sovereignty of this nation over to the United Nations. And when you talk about reaching back to the beginning and school shootings and mall shootings and supermarket shootings, and they talk about gun control, you're always talking about controlling the guns either illegally obtained, not registered, or you're talking about people who may legally be in possession of that weapon but are mentally unbalanced. And you say there's no reason for the Second Amendment. It should be repealed. And I even heard some conversation this morning from some talking heads on morning shows saying, what do you think is going to happen? You know, the founding fathers couldn't envision this, and that's true. But the king at that time had weapons that weren't any more sophisticated than the militias had. And we're looking at a situation where you could see UN soldiers occupying American soil. You'll see soldiers with blue UN armbands on. And this monkeypox could be the first test balloon if things go the bad way at the UN or at the WHA, World Health Assembly, with the very amendments our own president sent over. So who is responding to a string of monkeypox outbreaks and will be convening an emergency meeting on the virus and its global spread? Now, in terms of government power, see, this timing of this outbreak couldn't be better for the WHO. because they soon may be granted the powers to manage laws on a global health outbreak with complete autonomy, by the way, and which is oddly well positioned for monkeypox outbreak following a recent germ games call. The recent incidents tied to figures who include Microsoft billionaire Bill Gates. Like I said, I got into depth on this on Friday and Sunday, folks. Meanwhile, you know, the New York Post declared the World Health Organization is reportedly convening an emergency meeting into the alarming spread of monkeypox around the world, including a possible case right in New York. And this, if passed, these amendments would give the UN or the WHO, with the UN being the power behind it, to Tedros, right? Tedros can decide to implement any masking mandates, shutdowns, quarantines, vaccinations on the United States of America without even having to consult our country. And we, if this passes the UN, as far as the concern, we have nothing to say about it. Now, do you see why? Because again, this stuff isn't just coming out. They were planning this a long time ago. And you see why when Donald Trump starts talking about dropping out of the World Health Organization, which he did, and he's telling members of the UN that they really need to pay up their fair share of their dues. And he even floated, do we need the UN? Should we even be a part of the UN? What is it really doing? You have to keep your eye on what's going on at the WHO this week and know that those amendments that would turn the sovereignty of the United States over to the United Nations came from your very own president. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here at AM 830 WCRN. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back on Friday afternoon at 1, tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for Political Thursday with Jerry Doherty as well. Don't forget to tune in there. You can find more out at tjmshow.com. Follow me on social media platforms at Joe Mangi, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. And all these shows are actually a podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and all that, folks. So be sure to check it out. And I'll see you on the radio, folks. Joe Mangiacotti out. Enjoy the rest of your day.